For many centuries, there was no formal Catholic hierarchy in England. No dioceses, no parishes, no bishops as we know them today. That all changed 175 years ago on September the 29th, 1850. On that historic day, a papal bull issued by Pope Pius IX restored the Catholic hierarchy, re-establishing 13 dioceses across the country. At the heart of that transformation was the Diocese of Westminster and its first Archbishop, Cardinal Nicholas Wiseman. Today, I'm here at Westminster Cathedral to meet with Wiseman's successor, His Eminence, Cardinal Vincent Nichols, Archbishop of Westminster. Join us as we delve deeper into Wiseman's legacy and explore some of the remarkable artefacts here at Westminster Cathedral. Beneath the floor of the cathedral, tucked away in the quiet of the crypt, lies the tomb of Cardinal Wiseman. A key figure in the Vatican's efforts to restore the Catholic hierarchy, Wiseman helped shape the future of Catholicism in England. In thanksgiving for his service to the Church, Wiseman was presented with a remarkable gift, a beautifully crafted mitre, which we have preserved for over 175 years. The mitre was first worn by Bishop Wiseman for the consecration of St George's Cathedral in Southwark on the 4th July 1848. Thank you. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Wiseman's mitre. Would you be able to explain what a mitre is?
Well, it's a headgear for a bishop. Its origins aren't that clear. Some people say it goes back to the kind of headgear that a Jewish high priest would wear. Some say it's also connected with a very imperial role of a bishop. Often a bishop wears, or always a bishop wears, a skull cap underneath the mitre. That is for two reasons. Partly because mitres often had quite a lot of metal in them. This one does, and a skull cap softens the impact on your head if you're wearing a metal mitre. I have never worn a metal mitre. But others also say that the other name for a skull cap is a solo deo. So when bishops were taken in front of the Roman emperor, they were expected to take their mitres off out of respect. But they insisted on keeping that skull cap on. Only for God would they take that off. And so in the celebration of Mass, the bishop removes his cap when it comes to the central section of the Mass, when that bread and wine will be changed into the body and blood of Christ. But there's another version of an explanation too, which I rather like. You can see a mitre is made up of two halves, and it has these tails, as it were, at the back of the mitre, which hang down the bishop's neck. Now, in the ordination of a bishop, a Bible is held over his head. And some people have said that the mitre represents the two books of the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament, and it continues that dedication of the mind of the bishop to the Word of God and its preaching, with these two tails, as he were, echoing the book markers that were in the Bible.
Wiseman himself actually was very much working at a time where there was a political and religious separation that he had to resolve. How do you think Wiseman dealt with that?
Well, that I think is particular to this country. And of course, Wiseman's first letter, which is entitled From Without the Flaminian Gate, caused a real rumpus because he kind of rather misjudged the mood. And he wrote to England, as it were, rejoicing that it was now becoming within the orbit of the Roman Church. Well, Protestant England did not like that one bit. So he had to backtrack and write a second letter, which was very interesting because in it he said, our commitment is to the poor of the City of London and the surrounding population. And his appeal was to the reasonableness of the English people. So he said, come on, just see us how we are and what we will do, and in your reasonableness, give us space, give us recognition. Let the Catholic Church, as it were, be clear again in its presence and not belittled, restricted, or going back a bit further, heavily persecuted.
Wiseman really focused on the pastoral nature of his role as Archbishop. What do you think the most important role is for an Archbishop today?
I think we learn a lot from the contrast, the complementarity of Cardinal Wiseman and his successor, Cardinal Manning. Cardinal Wiseman's inevitable insistence was to try and establish a Catholic presence. So when he started 175 years ago as Archbishop of Westminster, I think there were 38 chapels and churches. And some of those were contained within the safety of embassies, like the Spanish and I think the Portuguese embassies, contained places where the Catholic population could go to celebrate Mass. In his first year, there were 3 more churches being built. And so he was keen, I think, to see the expansion of the structure of the church, its canonical foundations, and in that sense, establish an identity among priests and people that here was a church in strong communion with Rome, and that communion was in a very vivid way established by the appointment of bishops. Now, Cardinal Manning, on the other hand, turned his attention most of all to the service of the poor. And so his great affinity with the dockers in the East End of London was one of the great characteristics of his role. So in a way, Cardinal Wiseman called people to worship God, and Cardinal Manning called people to serve the poor. And those are the 2 main themes and lines of church life today, which is my privilege to serve and assist.
And considering the fact that London was and still is such a diverse city, how important do you think it was that this hierarchy was established in the Catholic faith in 1850 at the time?
Well, I think we shouldn't pretend that there was no Catholic life before 1850. And in fact, it was quite a vibrant time, so that the clergy who were here and were being ordained from seminaries abroad, they had strong opinions, and some of them very much wanted the rights of a parish priest to be established before a bishop was imposed, as it were. So it was finding the balance of a different way of ecclesial life, which I think history has shown gives it great stability. I mean, the mitre, in a sense, is a wonderful piece of work, and it brought together some of the finest workmanship of the period. So it was designed by Pugin, who was the great architect who reintroduced Gothic architecture. And he did that because he firmly believed that the Gothic style instinctively raises the mind and heart to God. And then it was made by a great craftsman up in Birmingham, the Hardmans, who were the workers in silver and gold and bronze and metallic work. Now, those 2 between them, Pugin and Hardman, designed the backcloth, as it were, for the House of Lords. So when you see this mitre, you see a similar style and a discipline in art and craft that you see in the House of Lords. So this mitre in particular tells a little bit of a story of how we managed to readjust with the emergence of a Catholic structure with the civil authorities. And that's still an ongoing relationship, which at times gets difficult, at times is very cooperative.
These kind of moments of the union between the church and the government as well, do you think they're a sign that there's kind of a springtime coming within the church?
Well, of course, it was Cardinal Newman who sometimes later gave that famous address at Oscott College in Birmingham called The Second Spring. I'm not sure. I think the research suggests that at Newman's time, and actually before that, the Catholic population in this country was probably about 10%, and it's still about 10%. So even though the numbers have gone up because the whole total of the population of the country has gone up, and we might be now talking about 6 million or more Catholics, it's still the great challenge to try and inculcate again some of the deeply human truths that are expressed in the Catholic way of life. Now, most recently, we've had this bit of a survey that suggests there is an upswing in the uptake of religious observance, especially among 18 to 25-year-olds, with a particular emphasis on young men. It's the Catholic Church that is seeing this upturn more than any other. So there are green shoots, and we work hard. And I think as we celebrate this 170th anniversary of the diocese, we should do so in good hope.
Preservation of the rich heritage of our Catholic faith is a responsibility we all share. Let today, the 175th anniversary of the restoration of the hierarchy, be a reminder to look back on how far we've come and give thanks to God.